Ava Parker is my name. The narrative I'm not proud of what I'm going to reveal. It's the truth, though. An unknowable truth delete. I position myself before the loo, sink and hear water dripping from the tap, which reflects the glittering light from the lamp above. A gentle, my body was wrapped in a towel, and the room was filled with warm steam like a soft fog. I sighed deeply, and my legs hurting after a run in the afternoon outside, even if the steam was gradually calming my body. The house had an uncanny silence. Mom wasn't at home. She had performed an additional night shift at the hospital as usual. Nathan, my in the living room, was the stepfather. Or that's what I thought anyway. I attempted to forget about him, but in actuality, I was always conscious of his presence wherever he was. Nathan is an intelligent man with profound blue eyes and the rough look of an accomplished entrepreneur. He carried in a sense of charm and intrigue. I was quite aware of, well, my ideas were incorrect. However, the glances that were stolen throughout supper and the intolerable quiet times when we stood too near were similar to a tiny fire burning inside of me. I entered the shower, allowing the warm water to trickle down across my body, removing the grime and fatigue. I shut my eyes, enabling the water to envelop me. Additionally, at that moment, Nathan's picture showed up in my thoughts. His little grin, the intense eyes that seems to look through to my innermost feelings. Abruptly, there was a sound behind me. I stopped and turned to face the bathroom door, a little jar. As Nathan's heart thumped in my chest, in the doorway, a tall figure emerged. His eyes widened in shock at seeing me, beneath the water. "I didn't know you, Ava." "We're inside," he continued, with a hint of astonished, yet still bearing that familiar serenity. I quickly pulled the shower curtain around me in an attempt to keep my voice steady in spite of the flutter of anxiety. "What are you doing here?" Nathan cocked his head a little, his eyes that flashed with remorse, but his eyes held something more as he gave me a look, the sound of the water, and believed that something was amiss. I should have told him to go. I knew, right away, it was appropriate to take action. However, I stood there with adrenaline flowing through my veins, making me not being able to find the firm words I required. I said, "I'm fine," dropping my head a little. Nathan gave me a glance, momentarily, then shrugged and leaned on the frame of the door. "Thus, why you locked the door, didn't you?" I nibbled on my lip. I can feel the heat rising on my cheeks. I didn't believe I had to. The loo felt suddenly too little for the two of us. Within it, the water's sound persisted, stable, but it was unable to remove there is a heavy strain between us. Nathan upright, his eyes solemn but simultaneously making fun of. I'm not attempting to cause you discomfort. Simply put, he stopped, a small smile appearing on his lips. It appears that we were both taken aback. I was at a loss for words, yet his eyes made breathing difficult. Both were involved, seeking and commanding, as though he was attempting to read every idea that came to mind. "Would you like me to go?" he said quietly. That query stopped me in my tracks. I need to have stated indeed. I was aware of that. However, as our eyes locked, I didn't want that at all. Everything. Nathan stayed in his current position. His sharp blue eyes stared at me, but they had a tenderness about them. The sound of the silence was still filled by the rain. Between our voices, blending with I could hear my own heartbeat. I was aware what I was meant to do, instruct him to leave and secure the door. However, instead, I felt the hammering as I stood there, my chest as though it were attempting to shatter free. I swallowed hard, hardly able to speak. Above a murmur, "I believe you ought to proceed." Nathan's eyebrow went up, but he didn't take urgent action. Rather, he took one tiny step forward, pausing as though for an indication that I should push him, shout, or run away. He simply hesitated, attempting to fill the eerie quiet. I was anxious. You're by yourself here. That isn't typical, Ava. I stared at him, conflicted. Between his statements and his eyes were a whirl of emotion. A portion of I was aware that this was incorrect, but another aspect drew in, enthralled, powerless. The room's vapor felt heavier, and the breath was heavier and came more slowly. I answered, fine, really. But my voice broke a little. I was aware of my assurance. Wasn't persuasive. He gave a gentle smile as if he could sense my inner agony. I understand, but being okay isn't always sufficient. My whole body flushed, not only from the warm water, but also due to how near he was, near enough that I could sense him. Take a breath. Nathan leaned a little against the door frame, his gaze momentarily following the water beads streaming down my shoulders and hair before going back to my visage. I will remain silent if you wish me not to, he whispered, his voice that was almost gentle. I raised my head I felt like I was fading away as I looked at him, between a dream and reality. He took one more tiny stride forward, now just a few steps away. I sensed that his body was radiating heat, even if we hadn't made contact. You shouldn't, I said again, be here. But this time, there was no conviction in the voice, merely a subliminal reminder that even I didn't. Nathan put his hand on the belief the vapor on the glass shower door's edge clung to his flesh, but his eyes, individual's eyes, that constantly made me feel insignificant, and though uncertain, he nevertheless stared directly into mine. Ava, just utter the word, and I'll go if you want me to. What he said seemed like a mild challenge. The dense, oppressive I felt tense, and I wasn't sure why. I was unable to say, get out. Instead, I remained motionless, my fingers clutching the shower curtain's edge. A flash of light appeared in Nathan's gaze, as though he had discovered the solution, was trying to find in my quiet. He took one last stride forward, and the room appeared to narrow between us until the whole room seemed as tiny as the area. It kept us apart. All I wanted to do was assist you with your hair, expressed in a light-hearted yet earnest tone. I bit my lip, gasping for air. I murmured, "You're insane," in my throat. However, I did nothing to stop him because his hand extended towards me. Just a little, he muttered, his eyes never. His hand departed mine, reaching for the shampoo bottle. The room was entirely filled with steam, and the shampoo's aroma permeated the air. I remained motionless while my hair was shampooed by him, and his fingers moving smoothly through every thread as if a calming, mellow tune. My heart pounded so loudly that I was certain he could listen to it as well. His breath touched. He leaned in and touched the back of my neck. Nearer. You have such beautiful hair. His voice was smooth and low as he whispered. His lips were almost touching mine, close to my ear. You ought not to be doing, I muttered, this, but I didn't move. Nathan chuckled quietly, like though he was aware of my inner anguish. However, you don't want me to give up, do you? His words encircled my heart. Constricting like a knot, I shut my eyes, giving himself up to the warmth of his touch and his proximity. I was aware we were entering a hazardous area, territory, but the emotion itself made it. I can't help but resist. Nathan rotated my shoulders slightly so that I was facing him as the warm water continued to flow, descending from above, interacting with my heart's pounding pulse. The steam obscured the window, but everything felt crystal clear between us. His face was inches away from me, and I observed the water drops cascade down his crisp, chiseled features. I could see in his eyes observed everything: self-control, inner conflict, as well as a weakness he seldom revealed. He gently tipped my chin with his hand. Up, his intense stare, looking for any a look of uncertainty on my face, as though in silence requesting one final time from me. Are you sure? I realized I needed to back off, shut the door separating us from all that shouldn't occur, but I closed my eyes, allowing myself to slant ahead as if dragged by something I couldn't fight. His warm breath touched my mouth. Right before his kiss heated me up. It began slowly, as if to test my determination, but soon became more powerful, more desperate, as though all the emotions we broke out after hiding for so long. I felt his hands in that one instant, slowly move down my waist, his inhaling heavily as we got closer. Collectively, the warm water cascaded over our bodies intertwined, yet the only warmth I thought that Nathan was the source of this intimacy that made me gasp for air. My heart pounded so loudly in my ears, I felt like my chest was about to burst. Could also hear the pounding of his heart. Just his chest was squeezed as wildly as mine. Against me, destroying whatever trace of Ava, he muttered, is the reason I left. His lips barely grazing mine, his voice, temple, and heavy with feeling, as though each and every word was heard between what is right and bad. Nathan dot dot, I returned in a whisper, although I wasn't, yes, if I called his name to get him to stop or to cling to him. He bowed his head, pressing his forehead to mine, eyes closed, as though attempting to contain himself back. He remarked, I shouldn't be here. However, his grip tightened around me, as though he was unable to release me. I cocked my head, up, looking him in the eyes with a look that made evident through unvarnished honesty. I shouldn't either, but I don't want you to give up. What I said destroyed any remaining walls between us. The subsequent kiss was similar to a storm, fierce, devouring, and departing, no room for uncertainty. I could feel his fingers gently glide across my flesh, making each my body trembles with nerves. He dragged me, getting closer, his warm breath grazing my neck, chilling me to the bone. The the sound of our rapid breathing combined with the constant flow of water, creating the symphony, was thrilling and hazardous. Everything appeared to fade. Away from us, just the two of us remained, a blending of spirits and body quivering with feelings. The we once drew brittle boundaries that had entirely vanished, leaving me with a feeling that is both excruciatingly raw and incredibly sweet. I had no idea how much it had been some time before we parted ways, just long enough to catch our breath. Nathan gave me a glance, his eyes burning with feelings he was unable to conceal. Cannot turn back now, he said, stated, his voice quivering a little, as despite confirming something he already knew too well. Yes, I did respond without hesitation, and I went down that route, a route when reason was subordinated to the heart, where brittle borders stopped to exist. Steam filled the room, and the spinning of our mutual breaths into an I was unable to escape the emotional storm. Nathan's powerful arms embraced me more tightly, around me, as though worried that I'd leave this feverish fantasy behind. Each time we looked at each other, I felt fully exposed, not simply on the body. However, in all of my hidden desires, he gazed at me, but he never dared to confront, like I was the only thing in the world. Right then, in his universe, his kiss deepened and intensified. His lips touched my neck, creating a burning heat across my wet skin, sending chills running down my back. I attempted should inhale deeply in order to regain my composure. However, the air itself seemed oppressive under his presence's weight. You're so lovely, Ava. He spoke in a raspy voice, as if there was emotion in every syllable. gazed up at him, my vision obscured by tears and intense feelings, was unable to determine if I was shaking because enthusiasm or out of apprehension for this emotional upheaval. It all seemed like an unclear fog where the boundaries between right and bad, between desire and prohibition, disintegrated. He bent down. His breath was warm, and his foreheads touched. In erratic beats against my lips, we both of us gasped as though we had just run through a crazy storm. I started, but what I said disintegrated under the force of my heart. I understand, Nathan. We shouldn't have murmured, his eyes displaying a profound internal struggle. But I'm unable to stop. To me, confession was like a sweet dagger. Soul, and rather than bringing me to the ground, it led me farther off course in his hug, slipped his fingers lightly through my wet hair, his touch arousing each my body's nerve. The gentle trickle of water reverberated all around us, blending together with the frantic pounding of my heart. I closed my attempting to persuade myself that even though this was only a dream, every sense verified its authenticity. The heat of I was drawn further by his touch on my waist, into the euphoric sense of security and peril at the same time once. Why must I be the one? I muttered, as though asking the question will assist me comprehend what was being placed. After a brief delay, Nathan's eyes, shining beneath the plush bathroom light, since I am unable to gaze at you without experiencing any emotions, something that surpasses all others. His words flowed like electricity, passing through me, and I thought I was being pushed between logic and fought back with difficulty, and a heart that had given up entirely. When our lips once more, I was aware that any idea, it didn't matter what was correct anymore. I once vowed that I had crossed a line. Wouldn't, but I wasn't at that time considering rules or repercussions. All I felt his heartbeat reverberating with mine. An incomprehensible symphony ceased. His breathing became labored, blending with my own ragged exclamations. Kissing my shoulder, each gentle smear of his fingers on my flesh caused me to, I felt like I was dissolving into time shifted. Shards appeared, and I was no longer conscious of anything other than the warmth, the soft yet strong beat of Nathan's motions. I was unable to discern between what was genuine and what was prohibited. That thin line was now only a faint recollection, and I had unavoidably descended to a depth I unable to climb out of. Nathan tugged the whole globe. Me nearer to his chest appeared to disappear, leaving only his reassuring warmth, a security I'd never experienced before, and the constant pulse of his heart in my ear. I closed my eyes, allowing myself totally give yourself over to the moment when everything was nearly unreal, since it was so real. Stood there, our breaths entangled in the oppressive, humid air, encircled by unnameable feelings. The water had become chilly, but everything was still burning my body. That had just occurred. Nathan clenched his jaw, his hug a little, as though worried that I'd retreat from his embrace. Ava, he, like a prayer, they whispered my name. I opened my eyes slowly and turned to face him. The water drips on his face shimmered in the light, as if memories are blazing inside of me in bits. I ran my hand over his cheek, sensing his skin's warmth under my fingers, unable to prevent a gentle grin from. He returned the smile that was on my lips. I had never seen such a soft smile. Not his typical self-assured smile, but something weak, as if he couldn't accept that this was a true moment, either. Are you okay? Inquired Nathan, his voice warm and smooth, like a breeze in the desert. I gave a nod, but nearly a surge of emotion slammed right away over me, giving me a shaky feeling that the delightful warmth was soon replaced by anxiety, embarrassment, and an ineffable sense of incredulity. What had I done? I took a step back. My eyes darkened somewhat with concern. What? What did we do? Nathan's grin vanished. His face stiffened as even though a chilly wind had blown through his ideas. Ava. To halt, I held up my hand. Before he could speak another word, I wasn't angry enough to stop him. I was halting him since I was unsure of what I was meant to feel. This isn't correct. I made an effort to speak steadily. However, the tremor was unmistakable. Nathan moved in the direction of me, softly placing his hand on my shoulder, a consoling gesture. I don't regret it, though. His words felt as though my heart were in a tight knot. How? How could he be so at ease when my world felt as if it were unraveling? How could he have looked at me? When I was drowning, I was everything. Between good and wrong, I gazed at him for what seemed like indefinitely before I turned aside, reaching for the hanging towel close by. The plush fabric pressed up against my skin, bringing me back to earth, a world from which I want to escape. Nathan observed my every move in silence. Motion. I was aware that he wanted to say something, but he appreciated the quiet, allowing me room to sort out the mess in my thoughts. We can't, I said. However, I spoke more firmly this time. Nathan, my mother. Her name seemed like an unexpected toll. Of a bell, my mother, Julia, the one who trusted both of us, the one I cherished more than everybody else. Nathan shut his eyes, briefly as if what I had spoken had punctured him. I love you, even though I know. His confession stopped me cold. My heart raced once more, and I was unsure if to weep or grin. Don't say that, I said, practically begging. Don't make Nathan did not approach. This is harder. He simply stood there, staring with sorrowful but loving. I turned, pulling the towel tighter about me, like brittle armor to protect myself from the whirlwind of feelings inside me. Exited the loo, abandoning him behind, each step feeling as though I was leaving behind something valuable, but terribly incorrect. When I got to the bedroom, I shut the door behind me. I was unable to suppress my feelings. I fell onto the bed, tears streaming down my face. I wasn't only crying out of regret. I sobbed because I understood that regardless of how, despite my best efforts to reject it, my heart always belonged to him. But I also knew that this joy was accompanied by unavoidable heartache, and we had gone too far. It could not be reversed. Sunlight flowed in the following morning, through the blinds, staring into my eyes as though to bring to memory the unavoidable reality. I remained still on the bed, gazing at the ceiling in blankness as the slowly replaying last night's recollections motion. My heart was heavy, but it fluttered when he considered Nathan, his cozy breath, his powerful arms embracing me, the kisses that occupied every void in my spirit. But in addition to that, warmth, fear, and remorse tore at me. How would I sat up and caught a glimpse of him? A peek of my hair and myself in the mirror, my eyes still crimson, a knotted mass, and swollen from sobbing all night long. Inhaled deeply, attempting to collect the traces of my poise prior to leaving the room. As I made my way down, the home was surrounded by a strange quiet. The recognizable aroma of the smell of coffee came from the kitchen, although rather than giving me solace, it only intensified the pain in my chest. Nathan stood before the coffee maker. His gray t-shirt was facing away from me, grasped his wide shoulders, and the brown hair was a little unkempt, as even though he hadn't slept at all. Stopped at the door, my stomach swirling with a variety of feelings. Everything seemed heavy around me, and each breath was difficult. I made myself maintain breathing steadily as I entered the kitchen. He heard it and turned around. My footsteps. We looked at each other, and nearly. We both turned aside at once, like if maintaining eye contact would result in our feelings to overflow once more. Good, good morning, he murmured quietly, serene, but with a hint of hesitancy. Good morning, I said, speaking in such a low voice that wasn't even certain if he heard me. I shuddered a little as I opened the cabinet to get a cup. I sensed his gaze sweeping over me as if he was trapped between moving in my direction, and I poured coffee while maintaining a safe distance. Into the mug, attempting to look calm. However, I was unable to conceal my awkwardness when a few droplets fell onto the counter. Swiftly, Nathan moved ahead with a cloth, and his hand briefly touched in opposition to mine. I recoiled, my breath. We stood there with my throat catching. Still, our gazes locking once more, awkwardly close but far away. We didn't say anything, but there was a heavy quiet. With everything, we were unable to. Nathan was the first to pull his voice. Hand away, his eyes gentle but sad. Ava, regarding last night, he started hesitantly, as if terrified by any word, would cause me more pain. I held onto the mug, firmly, my heart racing. Perhaps we shouldn't discuss it, shall we? Nathan's quiet was as sharp as a knife, nodded slowly, but I could see the profound dissatisfaction in his eyes. My chest, if you're interested, constricted upon hearing his soft voice. I was aware that he was attempting to appropriate action, but that only made it more painful. More. It felt stuffy in the kitchen. It's awkwardly silent. I thought I would break if I stayed a moment longer. I muttered, I'm going for a walk. And before he could, he hurried out the door. Reply. As the door shut behind me, I was closed as I stood in the morning sun, my eyes, and inhaled deeply. However, the eye had a sense of emptiness, and every breath felt as though it was pulling me down. Down. I was aware that we had gone too far, and everything felt brittle now. Just one more mistake, and everything would fall into place, collapsing. But how could I act as though, when my heart already fully belonged to Nathan? I followed the trail that led to visiting the little park close to the residence, my feet that appeared to be hauling me farther away from him independently. Dawn light that came through the trees, with their branches softly swinging in the wind, but rather than discovering I felt only turbulence, not calm, was now too obvious. The excitement, the terror, the agony entwined with delight, all securely encircling my chest, like squeezing a rope till I couldn't survive in this secret. Limbo, holding my breath, acting. There would be no repercussions. Every action I took brought me to the brutal reality. Mom, Julia had always had a remarkable, strong, selfless, and sacrificing so much. Mom. She gave me a lot of her life, and I had violated her confidence. I took a seat on a beneath the massive maple tree, a wooden bench, inhaling deeply to suppress the tears that threatened to excess. How could I confront her? How could I confront myself? The sound made me jump a little, of footsteps coming up behind me. Nathan was standing when I turned around. There, concern shining in his eyes. Always discovered me, despite my best efforts. Escape. You departed without saying anything. Anything, he murmured, taking a step towards. Voice was worried, but yet had that same tenderness. I glanced at him, and my heart seemed to be shattering again. I needed time to reflect. Nathan took a seat next to me. The room only a few inches separate us, but it's wide enough to be chilled. Comprehend? He bowed his head, his fists clenched around his knees as despite struggling with his own feelings. Ava, I don't mean to offend you, but I cannot act as though the situation we're in is an error. I glanced over at him and noticed the agony behind his eyes. I was aware that he meant it. I was aware that this wasn't incorrect in the sensation. but the repercussions it carried scared me. Are you really? Do you think my mother won't find out? I inquired. My voice was quiet yet shaky with fear. We cannot continue to live in secrecy indefinitely. If she won't ever forgive us if she finds out. The statement, Nathan took a deep breath, as if he was preparing for something unavoidable. His eyes shifted to me, brimming with both resolve and heartache. Should she discover, I'll take all of the responsibility. I don't want you to fail, the most significant individual in your life. I chuckled bitterly and shed a tear, slipping down my cheek. We've had crossed a lot of boundaries, but this cannot go on. He said nothing, and I could easily see the anguish in his eyes. I adored him, and I knew he loved me, also. However, this love wasn't what we may cling to without causing harm to the individuals we loved. What do you want? To perform? Nathan inquired, his voice shuddering a little, in spite of his attempts. I closed my eyes and my heart to maintain my composure. Weary of the decision's weight, my thoughts had compelled me to say, I'm, I'm going to speak with my mother. Nathan? His eyes widened as he winced a little. Are you certain, Ava? I have no other decision. I looked into his eyes, the affection and the spinning pain inside of me. She is entitled to the truth, and we must confront this. We cannot continue to run. He looked at me as though attempting to learn every feature of my face by heart. Regardless of the outcome, I simply wish you. I shook my head. I won't regret this, biting my lip to avoid having to breaking down. I might experience pain, but I will always love you. Whatever resolution he had was broken by my comments. Had departed? He bent over and wrapped his arms firmly encircling me, as if I fear that this may be the final time. I soaked my head on his shoulder, in his warmth, one final time before everything was permanently altered. Following a moment, I slowly withdrew and got up. Awoke. My eyes were hazy due to my heart had never felt tears, but clearer, regardless of how deeply we love one other, the truth had to be revealed. Nathan also got to his feet, but he didn't attempt to stop me this time. He continued. I'm here if you need me. His voice harsh but determined. I gave a small nod and turned, moving in the direction of the route that led home. Every step was excruciating, heavy, but I knew I had to continue taking action. Ahead, the truth, the reality, the something that would alter everything. I was unsure of my mother's reaction, had no idea what would follow, but I was certain that this tale had to conclude where it started, facing myself and being honest. Directly, as although love may either make you stronger or weaker, there was nothing but the truth that could assist you in moving forward.